became an author, and that was all because of a dare.
Oh my god, no, like this is my calling. I'm spending every single extra second I have on this and learning about this.
You can't spell work without woo. You gotta put the W-O in the woo, so if it works, then that's great. Public speaking is the most introverted thing that you can do, especially with a big audience. You don't know how it's gonna end up, but in hindsight, you're gonna see how it all comes together.
Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all. Family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives.
Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today we have Dom Brightmon with us for the Yegi Project. I am so excited to get to know him and hear all about his story and all the projects he's currently working on. So he is an author, a podcaster, a motivational, inspirational speaker, and so much more. So let's give him the floor. Please, Dom, tell us your story. How did you get started from childhood to today? Tell us what Dom is all about.
Oh, sure thing. Well, thanks, first of all, Yegi, for having me on your podcast and you continuously being consistent with your show, because that separates you from a lot of other folks who want a podcast because they get halfway and they're like, oh, God, let me quit. I'm tired of this, too much work. But, yeah, actually, when I think about it, work is actually one of the things that pops into my head. My dad, he was a hardworking man. He was a World War II veteran and also fought in the Korean War as an 82nd airborne paratrooper. Instead of flying planes, he jumped out of perfectly good working ones. And my mother, she got her master's degree in psychology, and she was all about education, and she kind of balanced him out since he ended up getting drafted and really kind of stopped schooling back then. So he wanted to make sure I got my education. And my mom, she was my first ever public speaking coach because she would always be the one to be the showstopper when it was time for her to be in plays at church or school. So yeah, like them two as my wonderful role models. And growing up as a church boy who eventually found his confidence, I'd say around 2013, because the year 2012 where folks thought the world was going to end, where they even made a movie about it, my world ended up involving me having to eat a giant setback sandwich of late July that summer, my father going out for a regular drive out into the random city, and he actually got lost in the wonderful city known as Silver Spring, Maryland, about a good 40 miles outside of Baltimore. Then on top of that, a month and some change later, turned 21, and on the day of my birthday, got into a car accident on my way to IT security class. And to make it even better and not butter, to complete the sandwich I had to eat, ended up having to almost lose my part-time job at the library at the time, because the thing is, we all try to maybe once in a while separate our personal professional life depending on what line of work you're in. But at the end of the day, we live just one life, and they all melt together. And the stuff that was going on at home was seeping into work, so I had a desire for change. And that desire for change led to actually setting a New Year's mantra every year at the end of that year, where it's like, all right, so 2013 is on the horizon. What am I going to do about it? You know what? I'm going to make 2013 my year of rebirth and focus on making sure that basically I was going to focus on personal and professional development, and just started the whole guinea pig process. And it's been one heck of a journey. Lots of twists and turns. Still got a lot of random chips not showing up on the bingo card for even 2023 at the time of this recording. And it's been one heck of a journey, still being told. It's say, right? It's like, heck, even listen to some of your episodes last week where you felt like you finally got all your ducks in a row, like once in all your areas. It's like, that's like a hard feat to actually maintain. Well, reach and maintain. And for myself, like, that's been one heck of a challenge. But hey, it's been all good. It's been all good, because the thing is, I'd say 7 years ago now, which is kind of crazy looking back, became an author. And that was all because of a dare.
What? Tell us that story.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was actually at a personal development conference through Toastmasters International, and I was networking with folks, and instead of handing out business cards, I would hand out reading lists to people and just put my contact info at the bottom of the wonderful reading list. And one lady handed the list to. She looked at the list, looked right back at me, looked at the list, looked right back at me, and asked me, "Hey, so where's your name and where's your book on this list?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, my name's on the list. It's at the bottom. You know, the Dom Brightmon, the 443. It's like, "Oh, I'm not talking about your contact info. I'm talking about you being an author." I'm like, "Shoot, it's not on there because, shoot, I'm not a freaking author." She's like, "Okay, how about a year from today, write your book?" And this was like 2015 before 2016 would have finally happened, where she was like, "Hey, how about a year from today you publish your book?" And I'm like, at the time I was 23, I'm like, the hell am I going to write about? I got nothing to talk about. And at first I was like, this chick is kind of freaking intense. I'm like, you know what? Nah, I think I'm good. But funny enough, I had a good friend of mine who actually a couple days later, after hearing about it, I told him about what happened, and he was like, "Hey, Dom, when are you going to write a book?" In the middle of a Q&A session of a presentation I was giving, where book writing was not even mentioned at all in the presentation. And I'm like, wow. So there's this long moment of silence in the audience. Like, it felt like 10 minutes, but it was probably like 15 seconds. But I was like, you know what? A year from today, I'm going to write my book. So ran home after the meeting was over, wrote 15 pages of raw content, actual pen to paper, and that became the last chapter of my first ever book, Going North: Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself.
Wow, I love that story. Well, there you go. You need a reason or an excuse to get started, and that was your push. Okay, so I actually forgot. I like to open up our podcast with some icebreaker questions just to start out fun and get to know you a little bit better. So let's back up. I'm going to do that before we continue on our interview and the journey that's your life, okay? So first question is, what's your guilty pleasure, or do you have one?
Guilty pleasure, shoot. Wow. I guess it's a video game, Final Fantasy X-2. It's a hated game. And the thing is, like, it's hated by the fan base, but the thing is, it was actually fun. It was long. So, yeah, definitely, that's a guilty pleasure of mine. A game that a lot of folks weren't a fan of.
Nice. Okay, second question. What has been the best day of your life so far?
Oh, God, wow. I think the best day in my life so far, that's pretty big. I have to say, from a faith perspective, probably April 4th, 2004. That was the year I actually decided to be a Christian of my own accord, to actually make a decision for myself, because I grew up in the church, as I mentioned earlier, and it's like, hey, you're going to be influenced by what surrounds you, but at the same time, at the age of 13, I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to really make this real and start the relationship from this standpoint. So I have to say that's probably been the best day of my life so far and counting.
Wow, I love it. Okay, what's the best and worst Halloween costume you ever had?
Oh, God, wow. So the worst Halloween costume I had, it was definitely a Power Ranger was probably the worst, because the thing was, like, my dad went to, like, a party city and got the costume, but the problem was, I think I was like 8, but the costume was geared towards like 4 to 6-year-olds. So it was too small for me to fit. So I basically was wearing my school clothes, but with a mask. That was probably the worst looking back. And that's hilarious looking back. It's freaking hilarious. And my best Halloween costume is probably the one I jokingly say every year. And guess what it is, Yegi, just for the heck of it?
What, yourself?
Yes, a black guy. Yes, I tell folks every year, it's like, yep, dressed up as a black guy. And the reactions I get are priceless.
That's horrible. Final question. If you were to choose a theme song to your life, what would that theme song be?
Oh wow, I'd have to say last time that I checked by Nipsey Hussle. Now, granted, you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, so it's like, well, that one lyric I have to switch it from West Coast to East Coast, and just like that, that was like the song I played probably all of 2018 through early 2019 before he sadly was murdered, like in that year. So yeah, definitely that one, like bringing people together from different races, backgrounds, age groups, like being an old soul in a Sonic Youth and being able to really help other people grow and advance in their lives. Like, yeah, that would definitely be the theme song of life. Although I'm not a Crip or Blood, I can't claim gang member status. I'm too much of a book nerd to be a gang member.
All right, awesome. So let's jump into your career. Okay, so besides writing the books, working on the podcast, I know you started out in working at a library after church. How did all of that kind of tie together? Can you take us back through your journey a little bit?
Yep, sure thing. Well, funny enough, it was after the meeting with the boss where I thought I was about to lose my job, and in that meeting, one of the things she brought up after bringing up all the areas where I screwed up at is the fact that, hey, I got some new folks coming in and they're going to be looking to you as a leader because I was working at that location for about a good 5 years up to that point. And it's like, hey, if you're still employed at a place for 5 years, well, you got to know at least something. You can't be a complete idiot. I mean, they wouldn't keep a complete idiot at the workplace usually. So it's like, you got to know something. So, but the thing is, always looking back at the moment, yeah, I was disappointed at the time after that meeting, but the word leader stuck in my mind. And that led to me actually going to the 650s, the nonfiction area, picking up some leadership books by John Maxwell. And one of the major books that helped me to develop was Thinking for a Change, where you ask yourself powerful questions to provoke powerful thought. Because the thing is, when you ask someone a question, even if they don't answer it right away, even if it's rhetorical, you're going to answer it, even if it's going to be a smart remark regardless. Like, a question needs an answer. And that book, along with many others, helped me to really change my thinking, and to the point where I eventually became more of a guinea pig, where it's like, oh wow, this book's really good, and I didn't fall asleep from reading this, as opposed to the books in school that made me fall asleep. It's like, wow, what else is out there for me? And just finding more folks like Brian Tracy, and even at the end of one of his audio programs, he mentioned Toastmasters International. And I originally joined that organization just to network with people and hopefully secure a speaker for a public speaking seminar that I was going to run in my community church. And funny enough, the wonderful event, it was wonderful for the first, I'd say 60, 70 minutes of the 3 hours, because the thing is, one major thing that I've noticed about seminars, especially a public speaking one, is that the fear of public speaking is real, because on the agenda, the first half was the keynote presentation for my buddy who gave a 60-minute presentation on the basics on how to present yourself. And then the other half, after a good 15, 30-minute break, there's going to be audience participation. Well, the event, my goal was 100 folks to show up, and I was able to get at least a good 110 people in the room. And I was like, okay, this is good. After the break happened, I was down to 10 people. So people do fear public speaking. People do fear public speaking like that.
Yeah, they don't want to participate.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we're going to participate by leaving. I'm like, oh, darn, okay. All right. I'm like, well, that fear public speaking.
That part out until everybody was back and reported back.
Right? I'm like, yeah, next time I'm not even going to say when it's going to happen. I'm just going to like leave it blank. It's like, yeah, here's a seminar. Something's going to happen. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Don't worry. It's like riding a bike. Just don't do a drive-by while you're riding the bike. You'll be fine. But, yeah, after the event was off without a hitch, went to another Toastmasters group, was able to hear a guy give a presentation about 2 years older than me, and he gave this wonderful presentation on how to act like a leader. And the 3 points were, if you want to be a leader, you have to be audacious, You have to be bold. You have to be contagious. You have to have influence and other folks want to emulate you. And then you have to be tenacious. You have to always stick in there. You have to stick in the fight. You have to never give up. And those three words stuck with me of being audacious, contagious, and tenacious. And he was a fellow millennial, no doubt. He was 2 years older than me. And he was selling books in the back of the room after the presentation. And after it was over and I bought a book and he signed it, I'm like, let me support him. He's a fellow millennial. He's trying to be a success in life, trying to do some good things. Ended up reading the book. It was a page turner. And all the stuff I was reading about were the same things he was writing about. And that was the seed
What book was
of
it, if you
greatness.
don't mind me asking?
Oh, sure thing. It's a book called You Are the Boss by Daniel Alley. You Are the Boss by Daniel Alley. And short, like 220 pages. Like it was an easy read. And it's like just about every subject he mentioned in that book really was the things I was reading about. So eventually that led to me bringing him on as a coach and eventually writing a book of my own afterwards on top of everything I was being dared to write one. So it all really just melded together because the thing is like going for, that's the thing, like you got to really take a step forward, like with especially with entrepreneurship and really putting yourself out there. You don't know how it's going to end up, but in hindsight you're going to see how it all comes together.
So, talking about you becoming an author, so you currently have 3 published books, right? Going North, Staying the Course, and From Crappy to Happy. Can you tell us your key takeaways or your key lessons from each book? If people were to pick up the book and there was one main lesson you really wanted them to learn from each of those 3 books, what would it be?
Sure thing. The major lesson from the first book, Going North, is that once you're done reading it, you're probably like, man, yeah, I could write a book like this too, because it's a slim, thin book. It's only 65 pages. And the thing is, one of the major benefits I gained from writing that book that wasn't even on my radar is that 5 other people became authors because of that, because they're like, dude, I thought a book had to be like at least 200 plus pages thick. Thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, like really dense. And it's like, no, they don't have to be like that because we're in the age of attention management where folks' attention is really at a high dollar figure right now. It's like if you can keep someone's eyes locked in long enough and distracted on whatever you want them to be distracted about, you're going to put yourself at an advantage. So big books aren't really the thing anymore. Like under 100 pages, you put yourself at an advantage. So basically confidence is the major takeaway from the first book. The second book, Stay the Course,
Wow.
is that self-awareness is the major key of elite performers. And the major reason why self-awareness is the major key for elite performance is because the thing was that book came from a place of a real lack of self-awareness. I should say a low level of self-awareness, because up to that point I thought, oh yeah, I'm pretty self-aware. I'm doing freaking great. But the thing was, had another meeting with the boss a couple years later, and this was shortly about a good, I'd say 3 months after my dad sadly passed away after his long battle with Alzheimer's, and I was going through grief. And again, that lesson of your personal life will always show up in your professional life. It may be big or small, and they were showing up in small ways. And the thing was, I wasn't aware of it at the time. And again, screwing up in all these different areas. And I was like, hey, you sure you're all right here, buddy? And it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not then. Like, I thought I was doing all right. And I had to go back to the drawing board. Boss was another coach for me. She helped coach me back into what I already knew that was within myself. And that's the thing. Like, those who really want to perform at a higher level, it's always great to have a coach, because the thing is, that's really your secret weapon that really keeps you at a higher level. Heck, even Tim Grover with Michael Jordan. Heck, even with Ip Man to Bruce Lee. Like, there are so many examples out there of folks who performed at a higher level because they have had great mentors, great coaches, great positive influences. And the thing is, having that level of self-awareness will help you to really get to that next level. So basically having to develop self-awareness at a higher level. And to the next book, Crappy to Happy, the major lesson from that is that a positive attitude can help take you further than you ever thought possible. Because the thing is, that book is a compilation book of about a good, I'd say 28 stories from 25 different folks. And the thing is, we all penned a book, or should I say penned a story to contribute to the book. And my story was the whole 2012 setback sandwich, where it led to me discovering personal development and eventually creating my own method of having a sustainable positive attitude known as RAVE, RAVE, where you read great material, you also immerse yourself with great audio material, then you also immerse yourself in great visual material. So especially if you have a yoga practice, if you have martial arts practice, heck, even education time, superseding entertainment time, like making sure that your eyes are watching something that's going to be good for you. And then, of course, the E, encouragement, encouraging yourself and other people, because if you're living and breathing, you need encouragement, even those around you, because at the end of the day, we don't know everything about everybody for good reason, because there are a lot of people who may be going through tough battles right now. And just a small word of encouragement, a small compliment can help them really make their day, or heck, even make their moment.
Oh, I love that. And I 100% agree with all of that you said. We need to definitely invest in ourselves and others around us to even feed our own souls. Awesome. So on your website, you have the phrase that says advancing others to advance yourself. Why did you pick that slogan for yourself, and what does that mean to you?
Sure thing. The late, great, legendary Zig Ziglar had a wonderful, powerful quote. It's probably one of my favorite of all time that says, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll eventually get what you want. And one of the major books I read in my wonderful, devouring guinea pig phase of personal development was The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. And one of the chapters mentions the advancing man, where you're advancing others in business. A person who has an advancing personality, who carries that spirit of advancement, is looking to help other people and helping them through their problems, learning about how you can help other people as opposed to focusing just on their own business. And combining that quote after the lesson from that chapter, I realized, oh wait, so helping others, it is advancing others. And if you eventually help enough other people get what they want, they'll help you in return, or heck, even the universe itself will return great favor upon you. And I'm like, oh wait, so if helping is advancing, I'm basically advancing myself by helping other people to advance as well. And that's really where it came from, what it's really all about for me, because one, heck, even highlighted in my first book, even Magic Johnson, a powerful celebrity figure, like in his rookie year in the NBA, one of his teammates was definitely tired after the game and wasn't wanting to sign autographs, and a kid was crying because of it, because they wanted that particular star's autograph. Well, Magic, he was smiling and he was happy that day, so he made sure to make sure the kid was feeling good that day. So he signed whatever he had that day and took a picture with the kid. And when Magic Johnson's career was over, he was starting his entrepreneurial journey, and he wanted to make an investment in a particular piece of real estate. And he had to meet with somebody who was known as a hard-nosed negotiator, who was very punctual and didn't like people being late. And he came to meet with that gentleman, and funny enough, the kid that he took the picture with is actually the son of that man. And my man Magic was decades on time, because at that point, he decided to help out a kid and make sure the kid would stop crying, to the fact that same guy was actually his dad. So it's like, wow. So that shows that life is truly customer service, and when you help other people get what they want, you'll eventually get what you want. And it also shows that there's no timetable, and that's why we should help other people.
I love that. I love that so much. So, talking about helping other people, you also started your podcast, or you've been doing your podcast, Going North, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the podcasting journey? Why did you decide to start that? And how has it been going?
Well, traditionally, it's still going north to this day. 700 plus episodes. We're probably, at the time of this recording, episode 724? Yeah, 724. So it's been a wonderful 6-year journey that started off as just an idea of me having another outlet to market my books and my business. And the thing was, that wonderful slogan, my mantra of advancing others to advance myself, came to mind, where it's like, hey, as opposed to me just rambling in the microphone all the time trying to build up my content, why don't I build up my content and build up my influence by really interviewing other authors, learning from them, and giving them a platform to get their voices heard. And it was really all about interviewing local authors and indie authors, especially in the Maryland area. And it really took a life of its own after a while, because the thing is, 6 months of true consistency with a continuous improvement mindset will really set you apart. Because the thing was, I really had no end game in mind for it. It was just another thing that I always wanted to do. Like, looking back, the books, they were the side quests to the main goal of eventually starting a podcast. And 6 months later, I got a bunch of random pitches from random people. And I'm like, dude, where the hell are these pitches coming from? And little did I know that, funny enough, my podcast was listed alongside Brendan Burchard, Gretchen Rubin, and Brendan Burchard and Lewis Howes on the top 10 self-help podcasts in the world by Steve Olsher. And I'm like, dude, I'm next to these folks. I'm just a random black guy from Baltimore. How the hell I'm next to these guys? And it's like, the podcast is consistent.
Awesome.
Right? It's like, dude, like,
That's
the
very
thing is, yeah, it's awesome. Like luck comes from hard work, and if you work hard enough and you continuously improve and get better with your craft, it'll happen for you too, whichever is destined for you to happen. So it's been one heck of a journey that's still going on to this day. And right now, the goal for the show, at least one of the major goals, is to interview over 1,000 authors across the globe.
Love it, love it, love it. So what's one of your favorite interviews that you've done so far?
Yes, definitely. I'll go with one in recent memory. It's one with a guy named Mike Montague, and he's actually the son of a guy who's actually a trainer for the Sandler sales training organization. And it was all about being playful and how play helps you to have more fun and more creativity in life. And like there were so many antics. I did my whole 80s professional wrestler gimmick imitating Macho Man Randy Savage with Hulk Hogan and combining the voices together. And he shared a story of failure that actually ended up being a powerful story of him gaining confidence, where it's like, well, if this famous celebrity can kick me off and fire me on stage in front of 1,000 people, I could trade 20 people with these, no problem. And just the benefits of play, like higher creativity. And funny enough, it's really for creative work altogether, because the thing is, when you try to force certain things to happen, they just don't happen. Like, one thing in particular, this one book I've been working on and off for 3 years, was a big undertaking, where it's like, oh yeah, I should start a podcast and help folks become a bookcaster, publish a book and start a podcast, and then do both and be a wonderful content creator, taking on the world in the business of immortality. And it's like, it was too big of an elephant. So I was like, okay, let me just focus on the one aspect of podcasting and put that book out there, as opposed to trying to take on the whole darn elephant. So really, it's all about keeping play in mind, gamifying your life, like maybe seeing certain things as levels. Because the thing is, as folks age, there's going to be new levels that you have to take on. Like with, even this year alone, like that, it's a new level of really making sure, like, because right now I have an elderly mother in her early 80s, and she's showing major signs of mental decay in her current state. So basically having to adjust my calendar now to make sure she's getting the best of care. It's like being able to still find ways when not making sure that she's still okay, making sure that I'm still okay, and making sure that I insert fun into my life, insert nature into my life as well. So that's been a major episode that kind of went down a little bit of a tangent there, but the episode of Mike Montague, playful humans, good stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean that's life, right? We're gonna have to find a way to balance it all, and 'cause like you said, anything that goes on in our personal life affects our career. So if we don't have our personal lives under control, there's no way we can be doing our best work career-wise. So I think it's really important to talk about it and spend time and focus on the big picture. We can't just pretend everything's fine at home when sometimes it's not, and we have things to worry about. So I love that you talk about that. Now, again, as far as podcasting and for you hosting, I know there's always a favorite question that podcasters love to ask their listeners. Do you have a favorite question to ask your listeners, and what is it?
Oh, wow.
Sorry, not your listeners, your interviewers.
Man, if we're talking about both, sure, if listeners like, hey, you join the content, if not, let me know. But as for guests, and this has probably been for the past year and a half where I've asked every guest that popped on the podcast is that if their book were a food, what would it be and why? And I get a lot of hilarious reactions to that question when I ask, because they're like, the hell kind of question is that? Like, oh, no, that's a new one. I haven't heard before. And some folks just bust out laughing. And the thing is like, hey, you're selling a product, you're to promote your work and your books and your writing. So it's like, hey, have some fun with it again, with the whole playful humans part. And then they get down in this another rabbit hole where it's like, you know what? My book is actually pizza because it's a giant pie that can feed your whole wonderful management group, especially since, in certain areas, they use pizza parties to try to motivate their employees, which kind of fails half the time. But it's like, hey, it's all hey, okay. So that's definitely my favorite
It's
question.
so
If their
fun
book
to
were a
ask
food,
that.
what would it be? Why?
Well, since that's your favorite question to ask, I'm going to ask you that question, Dom. So, what food with your book? Let's focus on the crappy to happy, since that's the newest one. What food would that be for you, and why?
That book, since it's more than just me, I'll just call it a wonderful buffet. Now that's a whole darn buffet right there, because there's so many different various backgrounds. Like I'm basically the millennial in the book with a couple other folks. There's some folks who are some boomers, some Gen Xers, and different stories from basically me turning setbacks into triumph, and some others who had this, who were actually, there was actually a story of a nurse actually had to give, sadly, some bad news about the parents to their parents about their child getting COVID at the time, back before there was a whole vaccine and before we even was comfortable even saying the word. Like, it's like there's just so many stories in there. Heck, even with a mother learning that her son wanted to become trans, and just her realizing that she'll still love her son no matter what. So like different stories from different backgrounds. It's a whole buffet. You get your vegetables, you get your salads, you get your desserts, your protein. Like you get it all. You get it all twice. It's all you can eat.
I love it. All right, so talking about self-help books, and you said you've read plenty of them and applied it, and you've seen the difference in your life. Now, a lot of us, or some people, do read self-help books, and it's all fun as we're reading it. We understand it, we know what to do, but then it's hard to apply it and kind of like live by it in order to get the benefits from what we've learned. What is some tips and advice that you have for people who are trying to better themselves, their lives, after they read the book? What course of action, or what can encourage them to actually take the action that's suggested from the book?
Sure thing. Just try to do at least one thing from the book. Just one thing. It don't have to do everything in the book. Funny enough, actually been reading a particular book in preparation for an upcoming guest, Victoria Gallagher. She wrote a book on how to attract good luck. And it's like, well, I'm already pretty lucky as it is, but hey, if I'm going to interview this person who's an expert on luck, might as well see where she's coming from. And there are so many tips in that book where it's like, you know what? The one tip that I've basically been applying in my life so far after just finishing the book yesterday is one of the things I've always been doing is just setting a positive intention for the day. Like every day when I wake up, I have the thought in my mind that something good will happen to me today. just setting a positive intention for the day. If you start the day off right in a good note, then that'll be one step closer to really having more positive luck in your life. Because that's another reason why a lot of folks may find woo-woo things a little crazy. But hey, if it's a little too woo-woo for you, you can't spell work without woo. You got to put the W-O in the woo. So if it works, then that's great. If it doesn't, then find something else that works for you. So really just setting a positive intention for the day and doing one thing from the book. Because funny enough, try to see the book as a friend. You don't have to try to have the whole friendship end in like one sitting. You can come back for multiple sittings and hang out with the book and see what else it has to offer, what other wisdom it has to offer. So just take it one step at a time.
Okay, yeah, I think from what you said, what I take away from that is just make it a lifestyle where when you wake up, you set an intention for the day. So you're already in a positive mood or open to trying something new. And don't try to accomplish everything in the self-help book you've read. Do one thing at a time so it doesn't feel too overwhelming for you to get started, right? Did I summarize that right?
Woohoo, she's got an A, babe.
All right. So here's another question about your journey. So you grew up and you were raised part of the church, and you said that kind of helped you with your public speaking. You were in front of people. Your parents were great role models to kind of push you there. And then also you worked on yourself with Toastmasters afterwards. And you're still currently active with Toastmasters, right? Can you tell our listeners who want to be better public speakers, who are totally terrified of it, what can they do? Where can they start? What's your advice for them?
Funny enough, preface that question of wanting to gain more confidence in public speaking with a possible new way of thinking. And I can't take credit for this. It's actually one of the past guests from my show, Sean Tyler Foley, where he mentioned that public speaking is the most introverted thing that you can do, especially with a big audience. And most folks are probably like, the hell's he talking about? But when you think about it for a second, if you're in a big room with a whole bunch of people, it's not a one-on-one conversation in a way. You're talking to a massive group of people, and if it's not even a panel or anything, it's just you on stage by yourself sharing what you know with the folks who are paying attention, who are listening, and some who may not be paying attention, those who may be on their smartphone. And like the thing is, it's the most introverted thing that you can do because it's really just you up there on stage. So come at it from the perspective of that, hey, it's something that I'm sharing a message with other people. See it as you just being an evangelist, a person sharing good news. There may be times where you may have to give bad news, especially if you're in a position where you're overseeing a group of people, you're the group leader, you're the group manager or whatever. But at the end of the day, just see yourself as someone who has something to share and focus on the good aspects of that, as opposed to just saying, oh my God, people are up here wanting me to fail. The thing is, especially when it comes to events and folks hear speakers, they don't want you to fail, especially if it's one of those paid events. They paid good money to see you speak and hear and get something to change their life. They don't want you to fail because that means their money was no good. It was wasted. So people want to see you succeed in the audience. They don't want you to fail. Come at it from the perspective as, hey, you got something good to share. And two, the people in the audience don't want you to fail because they lose out if you fail.
Yeah. And I guess changing your perspective of how you look at it and how you think about it. So you said more think about the introverted part. The way I understand is like you want to think about you're talking to yourself. It's not that big of a deal. There's a big audience, but it's not even a conversation. So if you kind of reframe your thinking about it, you can be more at ease. And the second thing is these people want you to succeed, right? So don't be afraid to do your best, I guess. And I'm sure it's easier said than done, but from my experience, I would say public speaking and Toastmasters you've mentioned. So for some of our listeners who don't know what that is, I actually have gone to some Toastmasters meetings too. They're a public organization where you can go and work on your public speaking skills. So you can go not knowing anything and you'll kind of practice, you'll get feedback from like people just like you to work on your skills. So I think that's also a great place place to start, or at least in front of the mirror, start speaking out loud to yourself. That's what I would recommend. But they do teach you like really good skills in Toastmasters to kind of channel those nerves for your speech instead of feeling, I don't know, shy or anxiety and all of that. So we can channel that energy that feels like it's anxiety towards giving a good public speech. So that's kind of where I would start. And then obviously, take a public speaking class at a community college. That's kind of a easier way to approach it too. And one thing I'm curious what you think, Dom, is because a lot of people also kind of shut themselves off. Like they want to have influence, they want to be leaders, but they think, okay, I'm not a great public speaker, or it's not for me, like I can't, like it's just not me. What advice would you give the person that has that kind of closed mindset about, hey, maybe it's not for me, or it's not, I want it, but I can't, it's not me?
Yeah, probably just jump in an ice bath is probably a good thing. Shock your nerves into being more open-minded. It's like, all right, let me get out of here. That's the real advice, though. Definitely, it's really all about just focusing on generating that confidence and focusing kind of, once again, like focusing on something good to share and focusing on making sure, realizing that public speaking is one of the greatest things you can do, especially in your communication tool belt to really advance in your career, because that's helped me to advance in my career with the library job, where I basically mentioned that I was early in Toastmasters during the new, I guess, the orientation on the wonderful day one orientation. Like, oh yeah, here we go. So this is the company. You have to make sure you do all this, this, and that. And then one of the panelists was like, oh wait, you're a Toastmasters? Oh, this is good. Hey, then out of nowhere, she told the HR rep who was spearheading the orientation, like, hey, Dominic does Toastmasters. He's good at speaking. Next thing I know, I was invited to be one of the trainers for the new staff orientation. And that got more eyes in front of me, and I kept advancing from there. So it'll get more eyes on you, what you really want to do. If that's what you really want to do, is advance in life and in your career, is just using it as a tool in your toolbox. Like, just see it as one of the major things in your wonderful utility belt if you want to be bad girl or bad man.
Awesome. So here's the conversation I want to have, and let me know if you're comfortable with having it. Because a lot of people also don't talk about money and how we earn it, especially in the creative world. Like the books that you wrote, the podcast you're working on, and then how did all that happen to give you the lifestyle that you want, to be lucrative, right? So you did mention the book, The Science of Getting Rich, and I've actually read that book. I'm familiar with it. So that kind of tells me that, part of your goal, you also wanted to have money. You wanted to get rich, to have probably a lifestyle that you're thinking about. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of your journey through your mentality shift, your career shift, and how things came to be for you to also feel successful financially?
Yep, sure thing. Heck, even one other book I'll even mention in the financial space, especially if those who may have a side job as a waiter or waitress, or at least any job that involves taking tips like Uber or heck, even DoorDash, like a book titled Tipped by Barbara Sloan. And that book is a wonderful book for basically those who want to get the beginning understanding of how finances work. Heck, even one tip that she mentioned in the book, especially for those who have tipped income, and being able to file your taxes in a way to where you actually make sure you count your tips well, not just your wonderful salary, is that you have a wonderful envelope method where you buy 100 envelopes and you mark them down 1 to 100, and then you just pick out of one random envelope after every shift or every paycheck, and then just making sure you stick some cash in that envelope, and that'll equate to about a good $5,050. So that way, that's one way to have another wonderful way to stash some income aside. And that's pretty interesting as a tip for someone who's getting started if they're bad at saving money, especially if you put it in a place where you're not usually looking for money, and especially if you can put things in a certain savings account as well. And financial freedom is another mindset thing that a lot of people want to think about on the big scale. It's like, oh yeah, I want to have $100 million, buy my own wonderful island, and maybe build a giant castle on it where nobody can get to me very easily. I want to make sure I have a moat where they have to make sure they have to cross a bridge across the moat to get there. It doesn't have to be all that. Financial freedom is actually where you basically add all your bills and monthly expenses together. And then if you can find a way where your passive income takes care of all those bills, you basically have financial freedom. So it doesn't have to be major $100 million Jeff Bezos money. It doesn't have to be that way because he didn't get that way overnight. It took him 22 plus freaking years with Amazon. So the thing is, start really small, find out what your number is and work towards that goal. And then work hard at your day job and then start wonderful outlets to create more streams of income. Like with myself, I have books. The book isn't the one major source. It can also become an audiobook as well. I've read 2 out of the 3 books that I mentioned today because the third book, it ain't just me in that book. So I was like, I'm not going to read everybody's stories in that one. But also the fact that the past experience with those other 2 books, reading them, actually led to me being a voiceover artist for one of my past podcast guests, where he hired me to be the voice behind his wonderful book, Stanley McCluskey, Divorce is Worse Than Death. So that was another income stream. The podcast itself, merchandise came from doing the show for a couple of years, and folks taking notice, and they're like, hey, how about you start some merchandise? And it's like, oh, wow, for years I was talking about, hey, make a t-shirt out of this, put this on a coffee mug or something. And it's like, well, after a while, kept on saying it out into the wonderful world. It eventually happened. So books, merchandise, audiobooks, speaking engagements, ebooks, that's another thing as well, like digital products, digital courses, working on an online course now. The bookcasting course that'll be out one of these days once I can get all these separate books out there like that. So really it's all about just creating different outlets to really have as many streams of income that you can, and just being happy with the fact that you have the ability to create. Like if you're listening right now, you have that wonderful computer, the original computer, your brain. So focus on something. Like your hobbies could eventually get some more income for you. So just focus on finding out what your financial freedom number is, taking all your bills and expenses, adding them all up together, and then eventually getting to the point where you can eventually start a business and let that business make enough money. Of course, set aside some money for taxes too, because IRS stands for theirs. They want theirs. And making sure that you work your way up to that number and they keep on going.
I love that. I love that so much. And for our listeners, I would like to add, you mentioned something that triggered this thought is, the hobbies that you're doing, pay attention to it and you can maybe make money with it. I think I don't know from what book I learned this and it just has stuck with me, and I kind of try to observe people. I'm like, well, this is what you should be doing, and tell them like their business idea. If I'm like to talk to them even as a friend, not even as a coach, I pay attention to, you have to pay attention to what you do with most of your free time, right? So for me personally, like I was in the beauty industry, beauty business. That's how I was making a lot of money. But then I noticed on my free time, I really wasn't looking at like new ways to do certain things in the beauty industry. Like most people in the beauty industry, they were looking how to do like new styles of hair or new styles of eyelashes. For me, I was just reading all about the self-help books about success and well-being and health and like money and all of these things. I was like, oh my God, no, like this is my calling. I'm spending every single extra second I have on this and learning about this. So I need to channel that into what is now the Yegi Project, which is still a project. I'm always working on myself and helping our listeners to also work on themselves, hopefully get inspired to do the same. But anyway, so I think if you are curious of how you can add a stream of income to your career, pay attention to what you're doing on your free time as a hobby, like Dom mentioned, and see what you can create to incorporate that. All right, so Dom, I have a final few questions for you. Some of them are fun and some of them are going to get you thinking. Do you have any other thing you want to add for our listeners before we do our final questions?
Oh, sure thing. Take one thing from the conversation, apply it to your life, and see how it works. Because I know I can go a mile a minute with the mouth of mine. I can talk really fast. So play it back, find something that works for you, work on that.
Love it, love it, love it. Take action. All right, so here are the fun questions. So what is one thing that most people don't know about you?
Wow, fun thing that most folks do not know about me. Well, I can be bad at bowling, but I still like it. I have an older brother who has won many trophies for his bowling ability. He's the athlete of the family. Me, I was more towards the books, but yeah. Like bowling, but not pretty good at it yet.
Okay, what is one book that you absolutely think changed your life? The first one that comes to mind.
Definitely The 21 Qualities of a Leader by John C. Maxwell. It's the black, gold, and green book. The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader by John C. Maxwell.
All right, if you can change one thing in the world with a magic wand, what would it be?
Definitely
Don't
racism.
overthink
Get
it.
rid of that. No, it's definitely racism.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like, get rid of it for everybody so that way folks can focus on truly, like, unconditional love across the board, across the earth. Like, just get rid of that as a whole, that whole negative mentality, so maybe we can hopefully get along better as humans.
What does a happy and fulfilled life look for you? And you can think about this one a little bit because it can be a deep question. So, genuinely happy and fulfilled life, how would you visualize or picture that for us?
Sure thing. A happy, wonderful, fulfilled life for me would definitely being able to be on stage, definitely full-time a lot more often than I am now, and really at my peak performance state, fully healthy, and family's well, I'm well, and the fact that, hey, I'm actually doing what I love full-time, because the thing is, like, that's one of the major things looking forward to in the future, and also podcasting full-time as well. So yeah, definitely full-time podcasting, full-time speaking, and full-time health for the family, where it's like, oh yeah, everybody's well, don't have to worry about extra help, caregiving, and things like that. But that's something I can't control. The last part, anyway.
Love it. Yeah, health always needs to be first so we can focus on everything else. Okay, so where can people find you, and any last words of wisdom you want to share?
Sure thing, Yegi. Thanks a bunch again for having me on your wonderful podcast. Keep heading north with your wonderful content and your consistency. And for those who want to keep in contact with yours truly, head over to dombrightmon.com. That's dombrightmon.com. And there's a free gift called The 21 Lessons Learned from Years in Podcasting ebook if you're looking to start, grow, and manage a successful podcast of your own from someone who's been podcasting for over 6 years and counting with 700 plus episodes and counting, all on dombrightmon.com. And my last word of wisdom, in a way, would be advance others to advance yourself. If you help somebody today, you're going to get that help again tomorrow from a place where you never thought possible. So go out there, help somebody succeed, and your success will come to you in a way you wouldn't expect.
I love, love, love that. Thank you again so much, Dom, for your time, your energy, and all the work you do to advance others as well. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in, supporting the Yegi Project, and always wanting to grow. So have a great, great day, Dom, and to our listeners, until next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.